All right, so motions for summary judgment. What is the purpose of these? What is the legal standard of these? Hi, guys.
This is pretty much been explained.
Jonathon Daily. Motion for summary judgment is a tool to essentially avoid going all the way through to a trial if there is no genuine dispute as to any material facts and one party is entitled to judgment as a matter of law. So it's saying, hey, judge, this person is entitled to judgment here without the need for an expensive litigious trial, considering take all of the material facts here that are at issue, and even if you view it most in light of the party that's not moving, so the party that did not file the motion, the party that doesn't want summary judgment to be entered, even if you read all the facts in light of that party in their favor, you still have to issue a judgment as a matter of law. Let me give you a couple of examples. A dog bite case, because that is an actual case, and there is one party, the landlord, who is my client, and they have no actual knowledge, because that's required for liability. There has to be some sort of evidence that the landlord had actual knowledge of the dangerous propensity of the dog in order for a landlord to be liable. So if we go through and we have depositions and we have affidavits that show the landlords had no knowledge that the dogs were dangerous, they did everything right, they did their due diligence, they got the vet record from the dogs, there was no history of dog bites, they called the prior landlords of the tenants that owned the dog, there was no history of dog bites, they had no actual knowledge there. So if we have that evidence and we can show that to the judge, and the defense essentially can flip the burden of proof. So we've shown our burden that just by the evidence that we have, by these affidavits, by these depositions, that the landlord had no actual knowledge, the plaintiffs here shouldn't be entitled to a trial in order to prove, because there was a child injured. We know anything can happen at a trial, and even if one party should not be liable, if the trial happens, the jury may feel bad and just say, oh, they're liable because they're terrible and a child was injured here, so we should just give them some money. But we're saying, judge, as a matter of law, we've shown here that the burden has been shifted to the plaintiffs to prove with some sort of shred of evidence that the landlord had actual knowledge here. Therefore, if they can't show that, any shred of evidence, we're entitled to judgment as a matter of law and should be dismissed against the landlords. There was newer law in Florida that happened, I think 2021 or so, where the new standard for motions for summary judgment was adopted based on the federal rules of civil procedure when it comes to motions for summary judgment. So the new standard is whether or not a reasonable jury could render a verdict of liability. So in the context, again, of the dog bite case, would a reasonable jury say, could they possibly find that the landlord was liable when there's not a shred of evidence that the landlord had actual knowledge of the dangerous propensity of the dog? The answer is no. Then summary judgment obviously needs to be in the favor of the landlord there. So that's an example. I hope that kind of clears things up. So that's a motion for summary judgment. Again, a tool to be able to get to judgment quicker as a matter of law without having to go through a super expensive litigious trial, when one party can show that there's no genuine dispute as to any of the material facts in the case, and one party is entitled to a judgment as a matter of law. And again, the new standard is whether a reasonable jury could find in favor of one of the parties given the evidence. So whether a reasonable jury could find in favor of one party. So that's the new standard. I hope that's helpful. That's motions for summary judgment.
For the latest in case updates, legal tips, news, and politics, make sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and our other socials, and above all, subscribe on YouTube to get your dose of excellence on a daily basis.